Oh, we're already recording. Oh, we're already recording.
Oh wait, it went away on my end.
Did it?
Yeah, I saw it for a second and then it went away.
Oh, it says we're recording. Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy Fagan, and my guest today is Sam Baker of Wriggle Brew. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you can tell that we are matching. Not on purpose, but totally noticed instantly. Um, Sam and I just hooked up this week, and Sam has a really exciting product to talk about. And he is actually, we were just talking, he's in Chicago at a regenerative agriculture conference, which is super cool. But
Very cool.
Sam, thank you so much for being here, taking the time away from that and hanging out with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I love the show and I love talking about worms, so I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we're talking about earthworms.
Earthworms, that's right. Not worms, earthworms.
So Sam, Wriggle Brew, tell us about Wriggle Brew. You've got a bunch of stuff going on with that.
There's a lot going on with it. And so the name Wriggle Brew is, well, one, it's a tongue twister, which is fun as we were talking about before the call. Because trying to say Wriggle Brew 5 times fast, it's really, really hard,
I've
downright
heard them
impossible.
once.
But it's also descriptive of what we do. We take wigglers, earthworms. We get the castings from them and we brew a kind of liquid from those castings. And we're using that as a fertilizer that we're trying to replace a lot of synthetic fertilizers that farmers are using with this. And we've actually been having a good deal of success with it. And our aim is to do this because we want to see the amount of fertilizer runoff really go down
Mm.
because where I'm from in Florida, there's so much fertilizer runoff that it's actually causing these algal blooms you can see from space. And it's killing vast quantities of fish and it's destroying the soil. So something's got to be done about it. And in 2020, myself and my best friend, while we were students at UCF, the University of Central Florida, committed ourselves to try and finding a solution. And eventually, our research led us to creating Wriggle Brew.
So, um, I I think that's fantastic, and I love I want to. So, when you were in college, you were thinking about this, like,
Yeah, and that's the kind of the crazy part is it wasn't something that I initially anticipated doing. It just came onto us while we were, in the middle of our second year.
yeah. And what were you studying that it was not worms, I'm assuming?
No, it was not worms. Wormology would be an awesome major if it existed, but
Oh,
we
yeah.
were studying. I was doing chemistry, and my best friend Gabe, he was doing biochemistry. We were working in the same lab, and there was this big runoff event that destroyed my favorite fish pond, like killed all the fish. And so I kind of thought to myself, okay, something has got to be done about this. And Gabe, my best friend, he's a lot smarter than I am. He knew about earthworm farming already. And I don't know how he knew about it. Maybe he had also learned about it the way other people do it, but he showed me a YouTube video of a guy in Puerto Rico farming these earthworms. And you've had a worm bin, so you kind of know visually like what to expect, but I had never seen that before. So it was a really wild sight. He puts his hands in the bin, he pulls them up, and there's all these worms and it's this rich black soil. And he shows with the process, and in the process, he's giving them food scraps and he's giving them like manure and like waste products from farms. And so I get thinking to myself, if you can make this amazing fertilizer material with worms, some plywood, and garbage, why is that not the way that we're making our fertilizer?
Right. Why are they not in every household? Why are we using synthetic stuff?
Why is our food waste going to landfills?
Because
Why
they multiply like crazy.
they do. They breed like every 60 days or something. And a huge amount of our fertilizer is coming from across the ocean. It's coming on vast container ships, anhydrous ammonia, urea, toxic substances that are made from petroleum. That's where most of our fertilizer comes from. It's petroleum product. So it's bad for the environment how it's made, it's bad in how it's transported, and then it's bad when it's actually applied because it kills soil microbes and it kills earthworms. So it's just this massive why. And in 2022, when the war in Ukraine kicked off, the price of fertilizer went up 400% for a lot of farmers.
Ooh,
And that's catastrophic.
right,
So we created a way to make a shelf stable, easily transportable worm tea that could just plug right into farm systems. And we started getting farmers who wanted to use it. And when we told them the price, a lot of them were just on board because it's cheap. It's cheaper than a lot of the synthetic fertilizers.
right.
And that became Wriggle Brew, and it we started shipping it out, and now we have soy and corn farmers actually growing with worm poop juice,
That's worm poop juice.
which
Uh,
is cool.
that's awesome. I mean, are you also, I'm just curious, are these farmers interested in raising their own worms?
Most of them, no. So a lot of them are like, for example, we've got a lot of soy farm customers. Many of them don't even do like cover crop. They are, old school. And I say old school, maybe like the 1970s sense. They use a lot of NPK stuff. They do straight lines of monoculture. They don't want to have to learn a whole new thing. But a worm tea that's a liquid in an IBC tote, they can take that and they can plug it straight into their system. They don't have to change any of their behaviors. Yet now it's rebuilding their soil instead of making their soil worse. And that's kind of the goal. Something that even the most least interested, ecologically minded person, someone who, would drive a souped up diesel truck that, hates the environment, would still see the benefit to using.
Right? Wow, that's so cool. I'm glad that you're able to sell people on it. I mean, like, the monocrop farmers are, they're hard to sell just because they're like, we've been doing this for decades.
Yeah, and they know it works for them, and it's for them it's a way of life. It's like going into a barber shop and telling them to throw out all the scissors. That's a hard thing to make somebody do.
Yeah. So
But
I'm curious how you sell that though. Like what do you like do you show and tell? Like do you have pictures? How do you
pretty much, yeah. It's a lot of pictures, but I mean a lot of farmers also understand fairly intuitively that earthworms are good for their soil. And liquefied earthworm, essentially, earthworm in a bottle, is something that they can understand pretty well. But the other thing is just it's very easy to use. It's really hard to screw up, and it has very obvious good results.
Hmm.
So earthworm castings, you may not know this, are full of both nutrients but also plant signaling compounds. So they're full of these molecules which plants use to communicate with each other, and also which plants use to signal to themselves to decide what to do on certain things. So one of these signaling molecules is called gibberellic acid. And this is what signals seeds to exit dormancy, to actually sprout. And so worm tea is full of gibberellic acid because earthworms encounter it while they're eating leaf litter and detritus, and they have a special enzyme that preserves gibberellic acid. So it ends up in the castings. The worms do this because it ensures that more plants will sprout, which means more leaves, which means more food for them in the future. But the upshot of this for a farmer is when they get Wriggle Brew, it has gibberellic acid in it because of the worm castings. And when they spray it on seeds that they've planted, they get almost double the number of seeds actually sprouting as they would if they just were waiting to use something synthetic.
Hey now. Wow.
And that is a money saver. That's a time saver. And it also means better, more plants.
Right.
And when you just look at the yields, worm tea, it happens to also be full of a bunch of plant defensive compounds, polyphenol compounds. The plants, all kinds of plants produce these compounds in order to ward off bugs and insects. Famously, capsaicin, what we make hot peppers out of. Well, we don't make them, plants make them, but what plants make hot peppers out of, what makes them spicy, is a compound that when we are exposed to it, it tastes hot, but when bugs are exposed to it, destroys their intestinal tract, causes their mandibles to even fall off. Those compounds are also preserved by the earthworm and end up in their castings, which means when you spray crops with something like Wriggle Brew, they have a much higher tolerance to pests and diseases, which means less money has to be spent on things like pesticides.
Wow. That's
So it's a money saver.
yeah. Win-win. My gosh. That's amazing. And so would you say I'm going to use myself as a as an example because I told you that I just moved to Virginia. My yard is horrible. I have the worst soil I have ever encountered in my life. I can't grow
Oh,
anything. So would you Would you use worm castings poo, worm poo tea?
There
Is there a chance? Is there like any hope for the soil?
is, yeah.
I have
I
never
mean,
seen anything like this.
I've gotten it to work on like really sandy soils. Now, obviously, there's a limit. Like you can't go to something that's like solid rock or clay and get that to become good soil.
Oh, it's
But
red clay.
that's pretty tough, yeah. But, you if you bring in worm castings, a little bit of them, you can mix them 10-15% in with things like clay, and you can start to bring microbial life in.
Mhm.
And microbes can over time make the soil a little more hospitable. Then you can start to bring in actual decomposers, isopods, nematodes, and of course, fame, WiggleBrew, you have earthworms. So you bring in earthworms, now you start working the soil. They can start breaking down chunks of clay as
Mhm.
long as they have a little bit of substrate to live in. WriggleBrew, the tea, the worm tea, is a really good way to help plants that have soil that's not so good, but I mean, it's not going to be able to fix, like
Dead.
red clay, probably.
Right. Okay. That was kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, you kind of have to like get
Pretty,
some compost, some other
yeah.
stuff, bring out the big guns.
Yeah, it's gonna take some work, but that is so, so cool. I'm curious what the dilution rate is for making the
Mm.
tea.
So that's one of the good things is worm tea can be pretty concentrated. So in our case, it's 2 to 4 ounces to the gallon. So that goes quite a long way. So if you ship a farmer, 275 gallons, he can make a lot of fertilizer out of that. And the typical application rate for fertilizer is like 20 gallons to the acre. So it goes a very, very long way.
Oh,
And that is quite useful also for shipping purposes because when you ship a liquid, it's heavy and it's expensive.
right, right. But so you ship it in it's smaller amounts because you sell it concentrated,
Yes.
and then they like hook it up to their hose ish
So for a farmer,
irrigation.
a major farmer, yeah, we sell them actually they're big totes. So there'll be it's like a 275 gallon crate almost. Kind of looks like a fish tank. So that's what we sell to them. And then they'll use that for a farm, 1,000 acres, 1,500 acres, 2,500 acre farms. But for a gardener, for a small farm or nursery, we'll sell them, a gallon at a time or 2 or 3 gallons. And then they turn that around and make quite a bit of product out of it.
Super cool. Oh my gosh,
Thank
that's
you.
awesome. And so you were saying also that that your worms have special powers.
Sort of, sort of.
In this is my fancy talk.
I like your fancy talk. They they do have special powers. They are well, rather the worms don't have special powers, but the microbes inside of the worms do. These microbes are capable of digesting some kinds of plastic waste. And we have been pursuing some research in that direction because we've been able to show that there is a pathway to take plastic, the kind of plastic you find in water bottles or in insulation panels, and convert it into worm castings. And that is really exciting because
Oh,
the
freaking amazing.
promise there is huge. The destruction of enormous quantities of plastic by turning them back into soil and doing it rather than in a 500-year timeline, doing it in like a 5 week timeline, which is much better than waiting, a couple centuries.
Right. I mean, because we need the plastic to go away like, you know, 100 years ago
Yeah.
or 50 years
Yeah.
ago, I guess. That's what's so, so cool. So tell me how it works.
Okay. So let's go down the wormhole. Um, Basically, the way it works is in nature, lots of different kinds of worms, mostly larvae, encounter materials that they often have difficulty digesting. One of those materials is pine resin. You can find it in, like barks and trees and stuff.
Mhm.
And these worms don't like eating it because it's rich in a compound called toluene. So toluene is it's like an aromatic sort of compound. It's mildly carcinogenic, not a great thing, but these worms have adapted to eat it because it's something they encounter in their natural habitats. Now, toluene is very, very similar chemically to styrene. which is one of the major compounds that polystyrene is made out of. In fact, it's really the only compound polystyrene is made out of, just thousands of styrene rings stuck together. So if you take a larva that is used to eating things with little bits of toluene in it and put it in a chamber full of polystyrene, better known as styrofoam, it will start eating it and it will actually digest it. Now, they don't like doing this, but they will eat it.
Wow.
Um, Now, that's not super efficient, and that was discovered a couple years back. They'll only eat like a couple grams in a year, like a really tiny quantity, and they have to be kind of starving for them to do this. But they're able to do this because there's a microbe, actually a couple microbes, that live in their gut that are really doing the digestive heavy lifting for them. So what we at WiggleBrew have been doing is we've been isolating those microbes, putting them into a fermenter, basically like a big chamber, simulating the gut of the worm, and feeding plastic directly into that chamber. And because of this, we're able to destroy a lot more plastic a lot more quickly.
And make worm castings.
Yes, and that's the second part of it, because when the microbes actually start to take the plastic pieces apart, what they're producing is a kind of pre-poop. It's a digestate. It's a material that you might find halfway through the gut of a worm. We can take that and then we can kind of make it a jello and feed that to earthworms. And when you do that, the earthworms can eat that like normal food much more easily than they could eat chunks of plastic, and they poop out normal worm castings.
Crazy pants. That's amazing. Oh man. Sam,
It's really, really
this
cool.
is huge.
Thank you.
Huge.
And this research was actually funded by the National Science Foundation, and they gave us a grant to actually pursue this and figure all this out, which we were able to do fresh out of university. And now we're aiming to try and get a little bit more grant funding. We just filed a patent on this, and we're hoping to be able to maybe get some investment too, so we can turn this into a real scaled process to destroy plastic in bulk.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. That is really, really amazing. I can't believe, I mean, you're super smart. Of course you can do that, but I get to talk to you.
Well,
I,
I wish I could take credit for it fully, but a lot of this was my co-founder, Gabe. He's really, really smart. He was able to come up with a lot of this stuff. I was kind of cheering him on for a lot of it.
well, and where is
But
Gabe today?
well, he's in the lab today, actually, and he's still working on this problem and a few other problems and interesting ideas that he and I have had. And so we're really excited about this, and we want to try and get this out there because, plastic is such a huge issue. There's garbage patches in the ocean, there's landfill mountains of the stuff. So the thinking is not just can we take plastic and, break it down to worm castings, but potentially we could breed these microbes to the point where they're producing enough enzyme that we could use the enzyme to destroy plastic where it is. Go to the landfills, go to the garbage patches, expose these enzymes to these plastics and have them crumble on the spot, have them come apart in situ.
It'd be really cool if we just stopped with the plastics, but uh,
That would be another. That's the two pieces of this. One is like stop using the damn stuff, and then two is please destroy what we have already made.
right, right. Yeah. I mean, it's plastic's not going anywhere, but if we could slow that down, gosh, it's like hard to stop the train, right?
Yeah, it's really, really hard. But at the very least, this is something that will hopefully slow it down a little bit. And that's what we're putting our effort into trying to achieve is, all right, we're not going to be the end of plastic, but we might be able to take a lot of the plastic that does exist and make it less carcinogenic, less poisonous, less choking up sea turtles.
Yeah. Yeah, the sea turtles. So uh you were telling me that you have had the microbes have digested like 100 pounds of plastic so
Yeah,
far?
it's
Styrofoam
actually
plastic.
yeah, it's kind of hard to measure exactly how many pounds we've destroyed at this point because we did not keep very good track, to be quite honest. But I believe it's somewhere between 100 and 400 pounds at the current moment. I know that's a wide range. A lot of that is because a big portion of that plastic was polystyrene, And polystyrene is not heavy at all. It's very, very light. And we ended up compressing a lot of it down with different treatments and didn't weigh it. So we're not really sure how much we ended up actually
If
feeding to
it's
the
400
microbes.
pounds, I'm not mad.
It might just be 100. In fact, I'm going to go with that because that's a more conservative estimate. But the point is, we've done this with a desktop bioreactor and like a desktop setup. So
Right.
what I really want to do is I want to get the funding to, instead of having like a desktop like 5 liter bioreactor, I want to have one that's like the size of this room, like a real honest to God little pilot facility where we're really destroying some of this stuff in a volume that starts to matter.
That'd be super exciting. Um, Gosh, geez, this is so exciting.
It is. It's
Uh,
really, really cool.
and worms, I just love that.
And
Earthworm.
worms. And of course, that's the other half of this is that, yeah, we're destroying the plastic, but we're turning it into something by doing that. And the thinking is that kind of pays for the process, that like pays for the cost of putting up a facility and everything. Because, there's plenty of things you can do to eliminate plastic by like burning it or by,
Mm,
recycling it as they do. But if it doesn't actually pay for all the work that goes into it, then it's never going to go anywhere. But this actually creates a valuable thing at the end. And
mm,
that I think is critical.
for sure. Oh my gosh, absolutely. So all right, Wriggle Brew. Oh, this is so exciting. What? Okay, so you are working on scaling this up. You're working on selling it to farmers and you want to scale this up. I mean, you're at a conference right now. Like, do you do a lot of education?
Not a whole lot. And that's one of our challenges is because we're a small team. There's 5 of us total. It's really difficult to be in a lot of places at once. And my experience is not I'm not a salesperson. I'm not an education person. Ultimately, my background is research, and so I'm kind of trying to figure all this stuff out. And running a startup, like running a podcast or running anything, is really difficult when you're just starting. You know, if you have years of experience under your belt, these things might seem trivial, but like for example, yesterday I was apparently wearing the wrong kind of suit. So I gotta learn to like do things like that.
Okay, I have to hear about the suit now.
I think I overdressed apparently because I wore this like really nice, well, I say really nice, it's my only suit. I have a nice black suit. I have a black tie and everything. And I go into this regenerative ag conference and I'm thinking like, okay, I'm dressed to impress. I'm gonna talk to people about my technology.
And they're not
Everybody
like
thought,
overalls, right? They're not like denim.
what's that?
They're not like denim overalls.
No, no, but everybody there was like dressed in like, relatively like plain clothing or like farmer attire a little bit. And
You're
I'm
like,
walking
"Oh,
around in like
new
my,
here. Come on, be nice."
yeah, they're all thinking I'm like trying to sell them something. I just want to tell you about our technology. But I learned today I wore more simple clothing, which is, much easier.
Perfect. That's perfect. So were they like totally wowed by Wriggle Brew?
Some people were, and that's the challenging thing because it's also like a lot to explain. Going through the whole thing of, okay, we started trying to fight runoff, we created a liquid worm tea fertilizer while we were researchers, then we figured out how to turn plastic into worm casting. Now we're trying to turn that into liquid fertilizer. We'd like to scale up. Like that whole thing, that's a lot to
What?
explain briefly. And also to get people to understand the gravity, because while you understand earthworms, because you've had a lot of time working with them, and you are an ecologically minded person, so you understand the significance of destroying plastic. A lot of people don't really seem to care that much or really understand the significance of it in some cases. So it's a lot of
Hmm.
trying to find the right words to get them to care.
Yeah,
That's a challenge.
I know how that is. But I'm surprised at a regenerative agriculture conference that people would not be that more open to that. Um,
There
but
were some people who were really enthused, so it was still, I think, a successful event.
grow worms, they'll eat plastic.
Straightforward.
Um, I mean, I'm sure they're like, we don't have plastic, but whatever. but still, your plants will be so happy. Your plants, your soil. Mm.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's so freaking amazing. So what? Let's see. I'm just like I'm still trying to get over this. Like this is huge, and I'm super just um
Don't
stum
get over it.
I'm
Get
stumbling
excited.
over myself. But when I say the word sustainability, Sam, what does that mean to you? I know you have thoughts on this.
I do. I have thoughts on a lot of things, but I'm not sure you want to hear all of them. Sustainability is such a buzzword these days. And in fact, they even talked about this in the summit today, but to a lot of consumers and a lot of people, it doesn't even mean anything anymore. And for a lot of people, sustainability just for farmers, a lot of what that means for them is their farm is sustainable if they can keep the lights on, if they
Hmm.
can if they can actually afford to keep the farm running. Sustainable to them is, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're sustaining being able to eat and being able to own their land and not having to sell out. And
Right.
then there's another layer, being able to maybe sustain good relationship with their neighbors. So the ecology, the world becomes at a very, very distant place when your head is in the soil. And so to me, sustainability can mean a lot of different things, but I think it should mean really all the things up to ecology, up to the sustaining the environment of the world. Because you can't ask a farmer to commit suicide for the greater good. You can't ask, you know, people to be unemployed. You can't ask people to stop, you know, feeding their children. So sustainability has to necessarily include sustaining people's ways of life, people's ways of sustaining themselves.
Hmm.
In Florida, this is a big problem, right? Because we have 1.5 million jobs related to using synthetic fertilizers. 1.5 million jobs.
Wow.
Now, a lot of people want to ban synthetic fertilizers, and I understand because they're really terrible.
Right.
But if we do that, we're going to wipe out a bunch of people's livelihoods. So there has to be a way to collaborate between the people who just want to stay alive and keep doing what they've been doing for generations, and the people who have genuine concerns about the impact that these tools they're using are having on the rest of the world. That's kind of a long answer, but to me, that's what it should mean.
Well, I mean, sustainability is a huge word and it means a lot of different things. And it's interesting to hear what everyone says. And
Yeah.
I will say the Emerge Impact people that I was telling you about that I'm wondering if they're at that conference, like Beth was the first person to say sustainability is not good enough. Like I do not want to sustain things the way that they are. Like
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
usually people have an explanation and she was like, no, I don't like that.
Fair enough. I mean, and honestly, maybe that's the way we should be looking at it because it is unsustainable to sustain using fertilizer the way we use it. It's unsustainable to sustain farming the way we do it.
Right.
We are rapidly exhausting the soil resources of this country, which took centuries to build, and we're destroying them in decades and in years. You can't rebuild those overnight. So it is unsustainable. And she's probably quite right to say that no, you shouldn't want to sustain it. What I want to sustain is I want to sustain farmers. I want to sustain them. I want them to be able to keep themselves going. And that means finding solutions for these big problems and not. It's sort of like people are often blaming consumers for drinking out of plastic bottles and stuff. It's not really their fault so much as it's the fault of the company that's giving them this as the solution for the problem.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of our criticism should be on those big companies. It should be on the companies that are pushing these products because it has a good margin for them,
Right.
because it's easy for them, because they make it easy for everyone else. They provide the infrastructure for us to allow them to pollute.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, I know in Maine at least. So she was a podcast guest way back. My favorite refill store, Go Go Refill. Laura Marston is the owner. She is writing letters. She is talking to legislators and trying to get the big companies who are providing the horrible packaging to be more responsible about that. Like to like reimburse or something for the way that it has to be cared for.
Yeah, because it costs money. It
It really
does.
does.
It's a very good way of looking. Every bit of pollution we create has a dollar cost because someone else has to come and clean it up. Have you ever been to one of those rooms where you like smash stuff, a rage room, I think they're called?
I have not.
You should. They're fun. They're really cool. Um,
I try not
we
to
kind
go.
of we kind of have like a rage room economy going on right now, where we have businesses going into the room, they're paying, I don't know, let's say $20 when they should be paying like $150. They're like a discounted rate to go in this room and smash all the TVs and the vases and everything, just smash it apart, and they're having a great time, and then they leave. And then now someone else has to come in and clean it up for the next person. And that means that person has to be paid to clean it up. All the CO2 we're pumping into the air, we're going to have to pay to take that out of the air. It's going to require resources to take that out of the air, which means money. All of the damage we're doing to the soil is going to require us to put effort into putting the soil back together again. So there's an abatement cost. There's a cost to turn the clock back. And I have a feeling that it's going to be dollar for dollar or pretty close to it.
Hmm.
And that's not going to be good.
My goodness. Yeah, I love talking this stuff. Things get really
I,
deep.
I don't want to be too doom and gloom
No, I
about
know,
it.
I hear that. But oh gosh. So what is there a message that you want people to come away with from this conversation, like specifically?
I would hope it's a message of hope, a message of optimism, because we do hear a lot of doom and gloom. We hear a lot of like, the ozone layer is dying, the ice caps are melting, the ocean is acidifying, but there are solutions for these problems. In the case of the ozone layer, we did actually turn the clock back on that for the most part. The ozone layer is almost repaired to where it was in the 19 like 50s. And it's because we actually had the courage to stop what we were doing and to create alternatives that allow people to get on with their lives and not create all this destruction. What we're doing at WiggleBrew is a small piece of that. It is another solution to try and replace some of these damaging things that we have done. And I encourage people who care about this sort of thing to just don't lose hope and realize that you can also be a part of the solution. You can also create things. If I mean, I'm kind of an idiot. If me and my friends can put together a fertilizer alternative that is successfully able to replace some of the synthetic stuff, you can also create things that are alternatives to damaging things we're using. You can also be a part of the solution. Everyone has a part to play in turning the clock back and fixing this. So don't become dismayed. Stand up and fight because that's the only way we're going to win. We're not going to win by getting sad and lying down and dying.
Mm, yeah. Um, awesome.
Thank you. I mean, I hope that's a good message. I
Yeah,
feel
no,
like it is.
I mean that's the whole reason for the podcast. Like we don't all have like millions of dollars or, thousands and thousands of dollars that just, buy all the sustainable things, but we can all do
No,
something. And
you
so
have a voice.
yes, and I want people to come away feeling empowered and encouraged and not like, you know, the whole world is going down the toilet. We might as well just, quit.
Yeah.
If we're all doing something, then we're making a difference. And it's just, wow. I am so glad that you're here. Um,
Thank you. I'm
so,
glad you're here.
you guys definitely keep your eye on Sam Baker. And what is Gabe's last name?
DeGalia. Kind
Gabe
of a hard one.
Gallia.
Yeah.
Yeah, not quite. It's not quite Sam Baker, but he's, he's super smart and he's in the lab making a difference right now while we're talking.
He
Uh,
is.
so Sam, how can we support you? How can we find you and follow and purchase your product or just encourage you?
So one of the things you could do that would really be helpful is follow us on social media. Help spread the word. If you know anyone who's a farmer, let them know about us. You can also use this for your own garden. We are on Amazon. We have our own website, wrigglebrew.com. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. Just look up WiggleBrew and you should find us. It's a fun word to spell. WRIGGLEBREW. Wriggle Brew. And try saying it 5 times fast.
Just try. I dare you.
I still can't. I cannot.
And so are you on all the socials? I don't think I even noticed that.
We are. well, I don't think we're on Twitter, but we're on all the real socials, and we are uh I think we're just called WiggleBrew on all of them. Maybe WiggleBrew PRAG, which is our like other business name. But yeah, that's us.
Okay, cool. I will definitely make sure that I have all that and I will put that in the show notes, you guys. But definitely check this out and support Sam and Gabe, please.
Thank you.
Sam, thank you so much. This is amazing. I'm so thrilled to be able to share this information. This is a game changer for a lot.
I'm thrilled to be on the show. I love talking about worms. Earthworms. I'm still working on it.
Same.